Could you actually see AI replacing what you do for a living?
I think there's going to be a partial replacement, not a whole
Hmm. Hmm.
replacement. I still think there's, I think there's going to be human involvement,
Hmm.
but definitely partial.
Hmm. I can't wait to try a driverless car because I'm just that afraid, and there's still lots of holes in what I already can do.
Oh, that's so funny because Neil and I are looking at buying a new truck, and the
Hmm.
trucks
Hmm.
nowadays come with an added feature of self-driving, and it's an actual feature you pay for. Who
Hmm.
knew that we could actually that would be kind of an upgrade? So
Hmm.
we're debating, do we spend the extra $4,000 getting that self-driving feature?
Hmm.
And I'm too
Hmm.
much of a control freak, Erwin. I can't do it. I
Yeah. My friend was telling me he's getting a very popular electric vehicle. I won't name names because we don't slander here. But, but
Is it
he
going to
was
be
telling
in
me
red or blue or what?
he was telling me how there are certain things that it's not designed for. For example, like highway construction, right? It's not designed to pick that up. So you still gotta pay attention. So then you almost like rather have less distraction, I think. You'd rather
I
be
guess.
focused on the road if you really want to avoid these things. But
I guess.
I digress. I digress. Apologies to anyone who's offended by anything you said. I gotta stop apologizing for stuff. Anyways, Rachel, thank you for first of all for doing the show. I know you're really busy. If we've actually, for anyone who doesn't know, it's taken like a year to get you on.
Oh, I think we're both busy. I think it was well worth the wait for both of us. Hopefully.
Hopefully. Um, so I like to start on this with the show with the end in mind. So uh, not let to the current your current life is the end, but I'd like to have like our listeners to have an understanding of like what is life like for you now, as in like how much vacation do you take, um, how does it compare to when you had like a 9 to 5 job, those sorts of things. Because for a lot of investors, like this isn't about money. This has never have been about money. This has been about freedom and lifestyle, right? So I'd like to know a bit more for our listeners' benefit. What is your lifestyle like now?
So for me, it's actually control. I
Hmm.
find freedom in having a sense of control. I went through, a major setback in my personal health journey, and I lost that sense of control. So man, did I want to just claw it back. I didn't realize just how much of a control freak I was. But
Hmm.
life is amazing. What I wanted to do was have control over how much time I spend in an office, how much time I spend working, how much time I designate for vacations, and how much freedom I have to be spontaneous. So if we are away for a weekend, and we're having a great time, well, we'll extend it by a day or two spontaneously. And I don't have to call the boss and make a weird excuse as to why I'm not going to be at the next, meeting. So,
Hmm.
life is night and day. I come from the corporate world, and I spent, I don't know, about 25 years working in corporate marketing, climbing the corporate ladder, and I worked in male dominated industries. So as a female, I felt that I had to always put in a little bit of extra time, extra effort, extra energy. And it depleted me. And, I loved what I did, but kind of if I look back, it depleted me, and it really constricted me in having control.
Hmm.
So in contrast today, my my boss is me, myself, and I, and sorry, my boss is me, myself, and I, and my husband, Mr. No, and we collaborate as a team. And sometimes the boundaries of work life kind of intercept. I'm sure you and Jerry have the same thing. It's kind
Hmm.
of it's inevitable, but I love it. It doesn't feel awkward. It doesn't feel like it's invasive. And ultimately, I didn't know this back then when we started this about 10 years ago, but I really wanted to do this so I could be present as a parent. Today, children have a very different upbringing. They have a lot of things at their disposal that we as children didn't have. And I suspected that that might pose challenges. And I really wanted to make sure that it's me that my kids see after school, not a television, not a device, not
Hmm.
social media. And that is probably the number one difference between where I am now, where I was about 10 years ago.
Hmm. That's awesome. And you have how many kids?
I have two, but it sometimes feels like four because they're divas.
Oh, you have girls. How old are
I
they?
have two girls. I have a 13-year-old who just started high school French immersion, and I have an 8-year-old who wants to be like her big sister.
Oh boy. Mine are only 5 and 4. My oldest is a daughter, so I already worry about the teenage years. I've heard stories.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, girls want to skip to the teenagehood a lot faster. I find,
Mhm.
and I often wonder if it's even me having something to do with it, because they see me always kind of, you know, learning, growing, taking on challenges, and I'm wondering if they're kind of doing it in their own way, and I'm like saying, "Slow down, don't grow up so fast." But it's a bit of a contradiction, in fact.
Mhm. Very cool. And I follow you on Facebook, so I see your vacations. Can you let people know what kind of vacations you're going on and how long?
Oh gosh. So we love doing something really extended, kind of overseas, at least once a year, where we go to, Portugal, Ireland. We've done Russia. We've done. Oh goodness, we're planning for Costa Rica in January 2020. So something that takes us to a different culture, to a different place, and not
Hmm.
always an all inclusive. We've done the Turks and Caicos thing to see that beautiful crystal clear blue water, and I don't like going back to the same place. I'd rather venture out to new places. I want to, Fiji is
Hmm.
something that I'd like to do for my birthday. I have a birthday coming up next July, and I've already kind of seeded that with Neil. Said, hey, it'd be really fun to do a birthday in Fiji. So things that are far away usually happen once, maybe twice this year. We'll be able to pull that off. I mean, in 2020. And then we do a lot of local stuff, because I think it's really important for kids to get a grasp of what's Ontario like. Let's explore our backyard. And we see the sites in our own backyard. And then, of course, the neighboring provinces. We've done, Quebec. There's lots to see in Montreal.
Hmm.
Ottawa is an excellent place to discover. I think it puts things into perspective,
Hmm.
and helps our kids appreciate the dynamics of Canada. I've often heard them even say, now that we've traveled to different places, they're starting to see that there's a different level of poverty in certain countries compared to Canada, that the economy is different. And they notice real estate. My goodness, my kids have grown up hearing Neil and I talking about real estate and buildings and houses, and they're actually observing it too. So it's great to be able to travel inside of our country and obviously go overseas.
Very cool. And so let's go back into your story. What caused you to start doing rent to owns? And then what year was this?
So in let's see, oh goodness, I'm not the numbers person. Neil's the numbers person, but
Hmm.
I'll try to remember. So in 2000 and in 2005, my first daughter was born on December 31st. She's a New Year's baby, and early January of 2006, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and it was an aggressive form of ductal carcinoma. Of course, I didn't know anything about it. Um, and that really is that moment that I was talking about earlier that gave me a sense of, I'm out of control. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how I'm going to deal with this, how I'm going to get through this. I don't know anyone to talk to. I was in my 30s, a brand new mom, on mat leave. There's just so many things that disrupted my sense of normal that that's when I kind of got a sense of, okay, what am I going to do to get control back? And obviously control comes from a sense of stability. And for me, I really wanted to find a way to create a stable financial income so that I could then control my time and spend as much of it as I can with my daughter. Because once, as once you become a parent, your life is not about you. Your life is about nurturing them. and supporting them and guiding them. And I obviously, was up for that challenge. But at the same point, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how much time I have left. Do I want to be spending it climbing the corporate ladder? Absolutely not. Do I want to be spending it asking for vacation time, proving why I need a raise, and ultimately helping their business advance and not my own family. So that's kind of when I started researching different possibilities. And I was very young when I read Think and Grow Rich. I was about 18 years old. So I'm taking you even further back. I read the book, and the book basically introduced me to the possibility of when you set the intention, you can make anything possible. Anything can be a reality. So back then I thought, well, I'm going to test this concept and I'm going to wish on something so absolutely asinine just to prove that this book is not legit. So do you want to know what I wished for?
What did you wish for?
I wished for the opportunity to meet Michael Jackson in person. As a teenager, I grew up following Michael Jackson. He was one of my idols. And I thought, well, you know what? What better way to prove this book wrong is to wish to meet Michael Jackson. And I put it out there. The intention was released, and, I forgot all about it. When I graduated university, I was 22 years old, and I decided, well, where am I going to go after university? And I decided I'm going to go and work for Pepsi. Why? Because Michael Jackson was affiliated with Pepsi. And I thought, well, this is probably going to get me closer to the possibility of meeting him. And I got the job, and I actually got the job as a marketing manager in Moscow. So I had to go overseas. And I do have a superpower. I do speak Russian, so I was able to use that, my little KGB superpower. And I got the job. And Erwin, 3 weeks into my job as a marketing manager at 22 years old in Moscow, I get a phone call from LA, the head office for Pepsi, and they said, we have some good news for you. Michael Jackson is making a stop in Moscow on his tour, and it'll be the only time he'll ever be in Russia. And you're going to have to work with the promoters really closely to promote Pepsi as a sponsor of the tour. I nearly dropped the phone. And about 3 months later, I found myself standing backstage with Michael Jackson, looking him in the eye, shaking his hand, and just, trying to catch my breath. So fast forward, when I faced the predicament of kind of deciding, how do I get out of my corporate roller coaster and the corporate grind and create a sense of control and sense of freedom? I went back to that validation, and I remembered, I can do this. I just have to put my mind to it. I have to just decide. And I knew that real estate was going to be the answer, because I've read enough to know that real estate is, the number one way for most people to create financial stability, wealth, opportunity. There's just so much around it. And I knew I didn't want to be a real estate agent. No offense, Erwin. I love real estate agents. They work really, really hard. But remember, I wanted control of my time. And if I became a real estate agent, I knew I would have to show properties on, evenings, weekends, and that would take me away from my child. So I thought, okay, well, I can't be a real estate agent. And then I thought, well, I'll own properties. Okay, great. But then I thought, I hate tenants and toilets. And then I went on a quest to research what are the other possibilities. And that's when rent to own presented itself.
How did you learn about it? Because what year is this?
Mm-hmm. So this is going back, let's see, about 2000. So 2006, I got diagnosed. And of course, in 2006, that year I spent in treatments and, basically fixing the issue. 2017, I got my wits back and I had to go back to work, and I had to, continue to make a paycheck, but I was researching things. And I would say in 2007, 2008, that's when I started attending meetups. There was just, a meetup in Thornhill back then. A gentleman named Azar was hosting it on Saturday mornings, and I would venture out just to hear people talk about real estate. And through those meetups, I found out about Rich Dad. Rich Dad hosted a weekend, one of those free weekends, show up and we'll sell you a bunch of stuff kind of weekends. But I was naive and I was open-minded. But the one good thing that came out of that scenario is that I learned about lease options. I learned about rent to own. And I thought, what if I could make money in real estate, create freedom, and help somebody else. So I really love the whole angle of investing with a purpose, not just for me, but for someone else's benefit as well. And it all kind
Mhm.
of came together. But it wasn't that easy, because when I brought this idea to Mr. No, what do you think he said? So that's how it all got started. That's how I got exposed and introduced to rent to own.
So for the listener who doesn't know what rent to own means, can you describe the strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. So rent to own is it's an interesting strategy that essentially allows you to get into an investment property quickly and create an abundance of cash flow, and exit that deal fairly quickly as well.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
usually it's a 3 or 4 year commitment on average, and in that 3 or 4 years, you're making a cash flow each month, and then
Hmm.
another portion of your profit comes from a capital gain, because
Hmm.
you're ultimately selling that house to a family that is renting to own from you. And all the contracts are set up at the front, so you know exactly what you're selling it to them for. You know exactly how much you're going to enable them to build up as a down payment through their monthly
Hmm.
credits, and ultimately you're helping them become mortgage ready, because they don't qualify today for a conventional mortgage, or they don't have enough of a down payment for a private or a B lender mortgage or alternative financing. So rent to own becomes kind of we're a family helping another family overcome the barriers to home ownership. In the process, we're holding the title on that property, and we're cash flowing. And the home buyers come in with an initial down payment. We're not dealing with first and last month's rent. They're giving us a down payment, which
Hmm.
offsets how much capital I'm tying up in the deal. But the best part is that they're also maintaining the property. So any maintenance and repairs, expenses, and time commitments are on them. And that's just
Hmm.
part of the rent to own arrangement. So it really is that proverbial win-win to help someone get into home ownership, and help an investor create a substantial income without the typical tenant and toilet headaches, as I like to
Hmm.
say.
Yeah, those are fun headaches.
You'd know a lot about those,
Yeah, I do
but you know
mostly
what?
long term.
That kind of stuff. I feel I'm warming up to the idea, because I recognize that you need to have a long-term strategy, and the short-term strategy has worked beautifully for us for 10 years.
Hmm.
We've replaced
Hmm.
job incomes. We've been able to create this time freedom and control of our lives, but now we need to kind of consider the next phase too.
Do you invest within a corporation, and some personal, some corporation?
Well, for financing purposes, it's always, personal. But we do have, so early on when we got started, I have a wonderful accountant, and I was at the time kind of giving him a pie in the sky idea of what I wanted to do with real estate. And he said, well, it sounds like you're going to be doing more than one property. And I said, yes. At the time, I had my sights set on 4. And he says, well, if you have many, why don't you set up a
Sorry,
corporation?
how many have you done today? How many?
Well, over the years, we're
More
now
than
at
one.
350. We're at 315 rent to own deals, and
315.
yeah, I mean
More than
it's
one. That is accurate.
and it's always growing. We did 3 deals today, believe it or not, and I think the opportunity will continue to thrive. But it's a combination. I mean, not all of these are part of our personal portfolio, because we
Mhm.
can't possibly have the capacity to qualify for that many mortgages. So we had kind of the personal portfolio. Then we had to branch out and do some joint ventures. And then ultimately we had enough expertise and enough inquiries that we ended up kind of packaging a done for you service when it comes to rent to owns, because we recognized that a lot of people really wanted to benefit from the lucrative cash flow and hands-free investing of it, but they didn't want to take the time to learn and ramp up with it, because there's a lot of moving parts and people didn't want to take the risk. So the done for you service
Mhm.
opportunity presented itself. So that is kind of, that trio is how we got here today, and we continue to thrive using that trio. That's kind of the three-pronged strategy.
Right, right. Because it's a lot of moving parts, and not all of it's easy either. To buy a good investment property is not an easy thing. To
Absolutely.
find the right tenant is, in my opinion, probably the hardest part. Would that
It
be
is.
accurate?
It
Yeah.
is, absolutely. 80% of a rent to own, success factor rests in finding the right people. And traditionally in real estate investing, it's always about we always think about location, property, and we run the numbers against all of that. But in a rent to own, it's a little bit different. In a rent to own, you're running the numbers against the people. What is their, what is their affordability? What is their debt load? What is their budget? And how do we make their financial situation work to help them become mortgage ready through this rent to own process? And on the other side, how do we make it profitable and sustainable and risk proof for the investor side too? So it's, the success with rent to owns definitely rests on our ability to find the right people to rent to own. And then I always say people first, property second.
Oh, absolutely. We can go into that another time. Actually, we can probably I will make a note of that. So how did you start off when you started out back in 07? How did you find tenants for rent to own?
Well, it kind of
compare that to today, but
it kind of fell into my lap, kind of like Michael Jackson coming to visit Moscow. When you set the intention and you kind of decide, okay, this is the path I'm going to pursue, opportunities present themselves. You know this. You are where you are because you seize these types of opportunities. So we had been obviously talking to real estate agents, telling them that we want to buy an investment property. So real estate agents were showing us duplexes and, single family rentals. And, the tenants were not my cup of tea. The numbers, they were cash flowing about $180. And I'm thinking these tenants are, I don't think they know how to flush a toilet. So I was thinking, okay, I'm just going to have to spend so much money on plumbers, and that's going to deplete my cash flow. So these are the things that were going through my mind. And I kept talking to these real estate agents, I wish we could truly find, really good quality people and they would really love the fact that we're giving them a great place to live. So one of the real estate agents took that to heart, and he knew of a family that needed some help. The wife had gone through thyroid cancer and she was just recuperating, and they had 3 small children, all under 8. And the husband, was basically carrying the load, but they had fallen behind on their bills. And he really wanted to create a sense of stability for their family because they had been renting for a long time. And now that his wife was recuperating, he really wanted to give her a home of their own. But he didn't know how to do this because his credit wasn't the greatest. And of course, she wasn't employed, so her credit didn't really matter. So he was speaking to real estate agents and asking them to show him properties. But the real estate agents are saying, well, you can't really qualify for a mortgage, so what's the point? And then one of those real estate agents kind of put 2 and 2 together and says, hey, I know a couple that wants to help a family, and I know a family that needs help. So what if I kind of bring them together? And that was really the start of it.
Interesting. Is this part of your model today as well?
Not really. Believe it or not, we deviated from that model. I mean, we certainly have real estate agents who have home buyers that can't qualify the conventional way, and they'll reach out to us and they'll ask us if we can assist. And if the family qualifies and meets our criteria, absolutely, that works for a real estate agent. They'll then take those home buyers house hunting, and they'll get their full commission. And, it's a transaction that they otherwise wouldn't have had. Absolutely. I wouldn't say that that's our predominant model. When you do something for a long time, as you know, you create a reputation, there's a sense of trust, and people find you. I'm actually finding that home buyers are a lot savvier these days than they were 10 years ago, and they're not taking no for an answer. Maybe they weren't getting no for an answer as often, but they're a lot more motivated to seek out answers. Even if a real estate agent doesn't know anything about rent to own, even if the mortgage agent doesn't know anything about rent to own, they find us, they read our book. We've written a book, The Rent to Own Essential Guide for Home Buyers. It's on Amazon.ca, it's on Amazon.com. I guess there's different ways of educating home buyers nowadays, and they're more savvy. So they find us. But when we first got started, we were advertising on Kijiji. Say, hey, we can help you rent to own, contact us, can't qualify for a mortgage, that kind of stuff. And we found it really difficult. Kijiji didn't exactly lend people to trusting us. And when we're asking people for credit reports and pay stubs and income letters, and T4s and NOAs, because we need to process their file with these documents. And these are very personal documents. So not everybody would surrender these documents. It took a long time for us to build traction. I've often had people say to me, well, why do you do more rent-to-owns today than you did when you first got started? Well, first of all, we were trying to figure out how to get people to trust us.
Mm-hmm.
Second of all, we were trying to figure out whether the rent-to-own model that we had created was actually working. So we didn't want to bite off more than we could chew and, just basically, like a hurricane ruin people's lives. We wanted to take baby steps. And we started with the first 4, tested the waters, identified where the gaps were, tweaked it, and went on to the next group. And then it snowballs from there.
What were those gaps? Because I'm sure beginners will run into them as well.
Oh, goodness. Yes. So typical gaps that we uncovered, our intention was never to do rent-to-own deals ourselves. We actually wanted to invest through someone else. There were other rent-to-own companies, other players that had experience. We researched them, and the concern we had was the success rate was very low. And I wanted a predictable outcome. I wanted to control the outcome. My goal was to really empower people through this process and, of course, give myself a stable, predictable cash flow. Nobody was able.
Sorry, Rachel, just to stop you there. You can see me, so people who can see know I'm laughing inside because that is the truth about real estate. Is a lot of RTO companies have really, really, really low buyout rates, and that's not true with your business. So
no.
Continue.
It was really like at some point I remember we were at a crossroads because either we could kind of feed into these models that were, poorly executed and support whatever they were doing, or we could take a stab at stepping out of our comfort zone and re-engineering the model and doing it our way. And the gaps that we saw were primarily related to affordability. So what tenant buyers thought they could afford was always more lucrative than what the numbers were saying. And a lot of the other companies would say, oh, you're going to win the lottery. Oh, you're going to get grandma's inheritance. Oh, you're going to take on a second job. Sure, you can take on a more expensive house. The investor had nothing to lose. They get to keep the tenant buyer's initial down payment. They get to keep their monthly credits, and they get, a well-maintained property in the end. Because if the tenant buyer cannot keep up with their payments, cannot exit into their own mortgage, the investor, makes a pretty strong return on investment. And I didn't want that. I wanted to make my return on investment knowing that I've helped someone or I've done everything I can to put them in a situation that will help them get ahead. So we reduce the affordability quotient. So when people would talk to us about getting into our rent-own program, they often commented saying, well, the other rent-own company said I could afford this much, and you're telling me I can afford this much.
Right.
They would say, yeah, because mortgage rates are going to change. Your income right now doesn't warrant a bigger price point. And if you want to exit into a mortgage at the end, you need to take baby steps. Somebody out there put it in some Kijiji ad, rent to own your dream home. Who the heck? I would love to talk to that person, because that's a fallacy. You do not rent to own your dream home. So we had to set the record straight. So that was a huge differentiator. And the other thing that we did very differently was we were building people up for a 10% down payment credit through the rent-to-own process, whereas all the other rent-to-own companies at the time were working with 3%, best case, maybe 5%. So somebody would come in with 2% and they would get them to a 3% down payment credit at the end of 3 years. What? That's not enough. Or they'd come in with 3% and the rent-to-own process would get them to 5%. Again, not enough. Neil, being a conservative-minded person, I guess this is where Mr. No is in his element, is that he looked at the numbers and he said, the mortgage rules are going to change. Today, we're working with 0 down. But 3 years from now, interest rates are going to be higher. 0 down is probably going to be a thing of the past. We need to get these people to a 10% down payment credit. If they don't need to use it all, that's fine. They're going to have equity in the property. which will still strengthen their position. But we know that they are ready to take on a mortgage at the end. And that's how he did it. And he insisted on a 10% down payment credit through our rent-to-own program 10 years ago, when you didn't need 10%, when you can get away with 5%, no problem. Until this day, we have this policy. And that has really translated into the 90% success rate that we have. 10% of the home buyers that go through our program get divorced or separated. That's that's just something we can't control. But anyone who gets to the end without a divorce or a separation, 100%
lose their job.
Or lose their job. Exactly. So it's a very rewarding process. At the time, we didn't know what the heck we were doing, whether this was going to work, but I'm glad we took a chance, and I'm glad it worked out.
We have this one client who was an RTO tenant that we helped them with. We helped them with the property. The tenant's probably like at least 2 years past when they were supposed to buy, because they refused to pay a phone bill at a principal, a couple $100 at a principal. They will not pay them back. So they haven't bought it yet.
And out of principle, they'll delay their home ownership.
What are your principals worth to you? Rhetorical question.
Exactly.
Can you explain to the listeners who Mr. No is?
Yes, I allude to Mr. No. He's my other half. He's my better half in many cases. He's my husband, my business partner, and my best friend. He really does a lot of the heavy lifting. I think I owe a lot of our success with where we are today to him. He does an exuberant amount of work in the background to help families overcome the challenges they're facing. And not only is he screening them and setting them up in a rent-to-own program that is going to help them, he's nurturing those relationships during the rent-to-own process. So a lot of people think, this is another kind of misnomer, that rent-to-own is a set it and forget it strategy. Well, that couldn't be further from the truth, because humans need accountability. In order to do what you need to do with credit repair, in order to do what you need to do with budget management, your finances, you need to know that someone's watching over you for you to actually do it. We've learned this time and time again. When you leave people to their own devices, things kind of go sideways. And Neil decided that he's gonna be a lot more hands-on. So not only does he put the people into a rent-to-own process, the minute that rent-to-own kicks in, he's checking in on them. He's actually maintaining a relationship with them all the way through and keeping them accountable. And he's there as a sounding board when they start thinking about these stupid ideas about arguing a phone bill with, one of their cell phone providers. And he's like the voice of reason. And man, do people love him. I don't know. Whatever love he doesn't get at home, he gets from all the tenant buyers.
How many active tenant buyers do you have right now?
About 60.
And he's coaching all of them?
At different times. I mean, they don't all need a lot of assistance. I would say it's probably about 20. It's a 20-80 rule, kind of like with anything else. About 20% of them need a little bit more hand-holding and a little bit more accountability, and 80% of them are smooth sailing with the odd hiccup.
Right. Interesting. Oh, and so for the listeners' benefit, can you provide some generalities around the tenant profile? Like, why would someone rent to own? So who is that person?
So it's usually a family that has, or a person that has gone through some sort of a major personal setback. So one family actually comes to mind today because we did this deal and we put this deal together for them. So they're from Brampton, and it's a couple with 3 children, all under 12, and they owned a home actually, but the father died, and the father was originally from Jamaica. And the father wanted to be buried in his hometown. So because of this unexpected expense, they didn't budget for it. And then they underestimated how expensive it would be to kind of arrange the logistics to do a burial and, fly his body over. And they ultimately had to make that a priority, and ultimately fell behind on their mortgage payments. They fell behind by 3 mortgage payments. In which
Okay.
case, the bank basically didn't foreclose on them. The bank said, we'll renew your mortgage, but at a 7.5 interest rate.
Yeah.
And they knew that that was ludicrous. So they had some equity.
Plus legal fees and penalties, all sorts of nasty penalties.
Exactly. So they're smart enough to know that they need to kind of cut ties with this property and start fresh. So they sold the house, took the proceeds from the sale, paid off the debt that they incurred as a result of the whole funeral expense and the burial in Jamaica, and they saved about $25,000 to put towards a down payment on a rent to own.
Mhm.
And through their 3-year rent to own process, they're going to work on repairing the credit and restructuring how they use their total debt service. So, for example, his wife, she's carrying the debt of both of their car payments on her credit. Her name is on the ownership slips, and her income doesn't support her carrying both. So it's throwing her GDS and TDS out of whack. So they need some time to just restructure how things are done. They can afford it, but it wasn't purchased with the intention of optimizing their access to borrowing money the way the banks want them to be structured. So that's really what we focus on. We focus on what's missing for them to get a mortgage, and how do we fill in those gaps through the rent-own process. And that's really what we establish at the front end. And we set up all the contracts, everything is laid out, it's very transparent. And the rent-own process kicks in. They hand over their initial down payment. That goes to the investor to offset the investor's capital. The investor gets their financing in place, and the rent-own kicks in. And when we do it as a service for other investors, we're managing the relationship with those tenant buyers. So that's where that Neil nurturing thing comes in. He's making sure that those tenant buyers are not only paying on time, but are doing what they need to do to fix their credit and become mortgage ready.
Do you charge for property management with your joint venture partners?
No, it's kind of part of all of our fees. We have, we have a flat fee that we charge to put the RTO deal together, and it's inclusive in our fees.
Right.
We're kind of an all-inclusive RTO.
Very nice. And then may I ask, how did you find this tenant buyer?
This specific one came to us through Google, I believe. I think they did their own research and they found us through their own their own assessments. Like I said, a lot of them are phoning different rent-own companies nowadays, and they're getting a feel for what's out there. And it's a relationship business, like anything else. If you can establish a rapport, people trust you. And I think that's kind of what brought this family to us.
Very cool. So in the old days, well, not the old days, but old days. Well, in the old days there wasn't Kijiji, but in the quote unquote old days, Kijiji was very popular. What you're saying, you're doing more pay-per-click advertising with Google?
No, this isn't even paid advertising. It's organic search.
The best.
That's the best one. Absolutely.
Do you and then how did they find? Did they read your book first? They buy it first, or anything like that?
No, not these guys. I think these guys went on our website and read our entire website, and then from there they moved on to filling out an application, and then a phone call essentially led them to make a decision. But I mean, the phone call is a two-way street. We have to evaluate whether or not they're a good candidate for the program. So once they had validation that they're a good candidate based on income, based on, what we need to help them accomplish in the next 3 years through the rent-own process, their expectations, a whole bunch of soft things come into play. It's not just about the hard stuff. How much do you make? What are your NOAs? What's your debt load? There's a lot of soft and tangible things. Are they committed? Are they motivated? Are they, blaming the world for their problems, or are they taking responsibility for their situation? These are all the things that come into that conversation to decide whether or not these people are a good fit for our rent-own program. Because if we're going to work with them for 3 years, we want them to be coachable and motivated, right?
Are you, can you share your website?
Sure. Rethink. Okay, so for investors, it's rethinkrentals.com. So if you're an investor, you want to learn a little bit more about how rent-to-own is done by Clover Properties, visit us at rethinkrentals.com.
Are you able to share what the tenants look at?
Sure. So if you know someone who needs a rent-to-own solution to get into home ownership, then the website is rethinkrenting.com.
Did you get 2-for-1 special?
No, they're actually totally separate websites and require completely different approaches.
Mhm. Now, I think investors need to know this one. How many people you think you turn away before you accept somebody?
Oh, needle in a haystack. We turn away, I would say, I'd like to say 1 in 10 is probably a good number in
That's
terms.
not bad.
Well, we've honed our ability to reach better quality prospects.
Mhm.
Through our website, what we communicate, the information we provide allows them to self-filter in some cases. So I think that's how we got it to 1 in 10. But it still takes anywhere from 80 to 100 hours to put a rent-to-own deal together. You still have to put in the time.
That's a lot of time.
It is. But that's what goes into putting together a rock solid opportunity. And we've systemized a lot of this. When we were doing this, just kind of figuring it out, it took even more time, believe it or not. And we're trying to improve things with systems.
Mhm. How long have you been at this?
10 years.
10 years. Good for you. Because it's funny because a lot of rent-to-own companies you don't even hear about anymore. Actually, I only heard about one just more recently, but the other ones I don't even know if they're still around or if there's just new ones now.
There's a lot of turnover. There's, your fly-by-night type of people. I think in every real estate investing strategy, I think you have people who dabble with something, or they have capacity to do maybe 3 or 4 deals through their own resources, and then they tap
Mhm.
out and move on to something else. I think what has sustained us is the fact that investors kept calling us, asking us if we would put a deal together for them. So that done for you service really, took on a life of its own.
Mhm.
And we became more than just investors for our own personal benefit. 1/3 of what we do is the done for you stuff. So our network grew as a result. And, we have a waiting list of investors who are mortgage ready and want to help another family rent to own.
Mhm.
And, it's been a journey, but it's, where we are now is so rewarding.
That's awesome. Like where we are today, like the affordability is just not easy. Like, can you share a recent example of what the purchase price was and what the rents would have been?
Okay, so the deal that we did today, for example, it's not really about the rent. What's top of mind is the cash flow.
Mhm.
um,
Okay.
so the purchase price of that property, I want to pull up the numbers because if I don't, if I'm just speaking loosely, I'm going to mix them up because, like I said, we did 3 deals today,
Mhm.
and those deals are all starting to meld together. Hang on, I'm going to be able to pull up a number quickly. This is a Brampton deal of the
Sure.
couple that I was just explaining, and I can answer your questions much more succinctly when I have the numbers to reference. So let's see here, pulling up the spreadsheet. Gotta love multiple device technology. Okay, so the property purchase price is 589,000.
What
That's
kind of
what it's.
property is that?
It is a detached. Was it a detached? Yeah, it's a detached house in Brampton.
Sounds like a good deal already.
It is. It's a really nice deal, and that's why we're shopping the market. We're shopping the open MLS, so that's why we have to move very quickly. And this deal, honestly, we released it to our network earlier this afternoon, and within 5 minutes, 4 investors were vying for it, and it's a first come first serve. So 589, the tenant buyer has $30,000 down. So it requires essentially a mortgage of about 471, which is really, really good in today's market. And because the tenant buyer is coming in with their, $30,000 of their own cash, it brings down the total investment to about 110,000 for the investor. And over the 3-year rent to own, the profit on this deal is about 96,000. So that 96,000 partly comes from cash flow and partly from capital gain. And the cash flow on this deal is 1,317, so $1,300, and the lease amount in this case is $3,900 to your question earlier. But keep in mind that through the monthly payments, we have to build up a bigger down payment for that family. So you want to guess how much of that 3,900 represents their down payment credit? Do you want to take a guess?
20%.
Well, give me an actual hard number,
Oh,
like an actual dollar value.
600, 700.
Close, but no cigar. $854 is going towards their down payment. So the investor is getting a $3,900 payment in their bank account, and 854 of that will be credited at the end when this family exercises their option to purchase. But the investor's keeping that money because it's their money. The tenant is just paying the down payment in increments, lump sum of 30 at the beginning, and then each month an extra $854 towards the future purchase. So, and it's not refundable. The investor gets to keep that. So that's where a lot of the cash flow strength comes from. By enabling a home buyer to build up a bigger down payment credit to make them a stronger candidate for a mortgage, we're ultimately creating more lucrative cash flow for ourselves as investors. So I guess that's the ultimate win-win.
Fantastic. May I ask what kind of income does this tenant have to have?
Very good question. So in this family specifically, their income is $160,000, more than enough to afford the type of property that they're vying for. Now, I will give you a little bit of a disclaimer. This is a very hardworking family, and the husband actually has not just one, but two jobs, and the wife also has a job. And he was recently promoted. One of his jobs is for the city of Toronto, so it's a government job.
Oh, with pension.
Yeah, absolutely. And stability. And he's been there a long time, and he just got a promotion. So that's a really great indicator. And he has another job, a second job, that he works for a I want to say it's a nursing home. It's some sort of a care facility. So he does that on the side as well. So when you take and she's a PSW, personal support worker. So when you take all their three job incomes combined, it adds up to about $160,000. So from my point of view, these people are an awesome candidate. They're committed to their own success, and that makes us want to commit to helping them rent to own.
Fantastic. Wow. That's fantastic. So we're running out of time. If anyone wants to follow you in your journey, follow up with you, how can they do so?
Well, I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook time to time when I have fun pictures to post. I recently posted Tough Mudder pictures. Did you see that?
It did.
Isn't that crazy? I know. Have you done
How many have you done? Yeah, I did one 4 years ago, and I vowed to never do it again.
Really? Oh my goodness. I was thinking I'm going to rope you in to do the next one with us. This was my first one. Oh man, talk about pushing your comfort zone. I was so uneasy about it. I didn't even sleep the night before because I thought, what if I can't do this? What if I fall flat on my face? And honestly, I was overthinking it. So anyway, so I digress. But
no, I saw people who couldn't finish. I saw significant injuries on the course.
Did you? Really? No. Yeah. I was kind of like, easy does it. Just get through it. We weren't racing. We weren't running. In fact, we took our time. And in the end, we thought, okay, if there's an obstacle that's too intimidating, we're going to bypass it because you can always bypass. But we actually didn't. We completed every single obstacle. Easy does it. The camaraderie. I guess maybe when you're a girl, these tough guys come up to you and say, do you need help? Can I give you a boost? Can I give you a lift? And that's how we got through the course. So I would do it again. I definitely would do it again. So maybe you'll reconsider. Maybe we can twist your arm.
I'm already, my stretch goal is to do a 5K race next year. That's my stretch.
5K. Oh my goodness.
Road race, not even off road.
Well, if you need any inspiration, let me know because running is my absolute biggest weakness.
Yeah.
And I was training for a half marathon at one point. I got to 12K during my training and I gave up. Couldn't do it. Getting to 12K was so grueling that I thought I can't even imagine another 5, 10, 13K on top of this. And I just, when it doesn't feel right.
26 kilometers, right? 26 kilometers?
I think it's
Right?
26. Yeah. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't align with who I am. So not doing it, but I
Yeah,
can do
5K.
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 I'm in, I can do 5K. Anyways, to answer your question, I'm on Facebook. You can look up Rachel Oliver. I do a lot of educational talks.
Mhm.
I really feel that I have a lot of knowledge and expertise to share. And if I can guide everyone on what a good rent to own looks like, whether people are doing it themselves or they're looking at partnering up or joint venturing, or even if they're looking to get a property and then try to fill it with tenant buyers, I think
Mhm.
they still would benefit from some of the educational talks they give around town.
Yeah, because if you're gonna learn it from someone who gets 90% buyouts. All right, let's help some folks.
That's what I would do if I was starting out. I'd be looking for someone like me.
Where can people find your talks? Yeah, you have a TV show, don't you? Can't people find
Well,
that?
yes, I do some stuff on TV, but I don't have the schedule to announce. But I will be posting TV appearances on. Actually, I have some stuff coming out end of September, so I'll be posting all of that on Facebook, and people can also connect with me through the website rethinkrentals.com. Um, those are probably the two best places. I mean, I'm easy to find. I'm out there, and
Right.
if they don't know how to reach me, they can ask you because you know how to get me.
I know you'll be at the November 9th Wealth Hacker Conference.
Absolutely. I'm there. I was one of the first to buy one of those VIP tickets.
Yeah, you were smart. You saved a lot of money doing so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm looking forward to the content, and it's not just about, the speakers on stage. It's also about the people that will be surrounding you, because the
Mhm.
energy comes from, all around. So I was really excited to be part of that. And I'm
Right.
really kudos to you guys for putting it on.
Thank you, thank you. And if you want to get closer to Rachel, she'll be in the VIP. And just to, if anyone's serious, you're usually in the VIP. Like a mutual friend of ours, she told me one of her biggest JV partners sat next to her in a VIP. Right?
Absolutely.
If for anyone out there looking for money, where do you think they are?
That's right. That's right. And sometimes it seems like, well, why am I going to spend so much money on tickets? Well, if you're looking to establish credible connections, you find those people who are willing to spend the money, who have the money to
Mhm.
spend. So even if it doesn't feel right for you, depending on what your end game is,
Mhm.
consider where you're. Because I often say, change and possibilities and opportunities are definitely available to you, but they're not about you. It's about the other people around you.
Right. And like you're a VIP, so you'll be in the VIP lunch as well, which is so you have your own exclusive room for VIPs. So lots of opportunity to network with high level folks such as yourself. 300 and what? How many? Wow.
315.
Gee. Just a quick question. Do you do anything outside of Ontario?
No, we play in our own backyard. We've really honed in our expertise in the Ontario space. There's still
Mhm.
lots of opportunity here.
Mhm.
And I'm not ready to dilute our time
Mhm.
to go beyond Ontario. Not yet, anyway.
Do you do much outside the Golden Horseshoe?
No, not really. I think the Golden Horseshoe represents a lot of opportunity. That
Right.
ripple effect that we always talk about
Right.
is happening, and I'm seizing those opportunities right now. And until that runs out, there's no need to go anywhere else.
Right. Because I just find this funny commonality among RTO deals that get sent my way is I don't know where that city is in Ontario.
Yeah, there definitely is a bit of a balancing act. Like how many, what's the population of that community? Is it, 3,500? You probably want to stay away. You definitely still want to be looking at areas that have some basic fundamentals. And population growth
Like a
is,
traffic light.
yeah,
I'm
exactly.
sorry.
In that community, it's definitely worth considering.
They have a
But
Walmart.
yeah, the usual Walmart, Starbucks. It's got to be a commuter-friendly area, because we're not dealing with renter mentality. We're dealing with home buyer mentality, and home buyers want to live next to great schools, not farm country,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
Although there's lots of merit potentially to some of those other communities, they're not rent-to-own ripe today. So we don't
Hmm.
touch a lot of those less, unrecognizable names.
Right.
But maybe 6 years ago, Clarington wasn't on anybody's, and now Clarington is
Yeah,
a huge
that's on the
up-and-coming.
407 though.
It's what?
It's on the 407. Like it's coming.
It is, but it still wasn't on the radar for a lot of people. And now that,
Yeah.
it's kind of part of the Durham region,
Mhm.
people talk about it. But if you told me, 6 years ago I should be doing a rent-own in Clarington, I could have thought, no, I'll stick to Hamilton.
Mhm. Mhm. All right,
And
Rachel.
we do a
Thank
lot
you
of
so
stuff
much.
in Hamilton.
I know you do. It's a good place to invest. It's like the gift that keeps on giving. Honestly, is. Wow. Rachel, thanks so much for doing this. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you November 9th. And thank you so much. Like 90% buyout ratio, over 300 deals. That's ridiculous. For anyone who's listening, that is ridiculous. Ridiculously good. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much
Erwin.
again. All right, thanks.